And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on a busy Friday evening. I know a lot of you guys had a lot of plans out there. Hopefully you guys had a lot of fun. Tonight we'll have our NBA trade deadline live for you guys. That's what you're tuning in for now. And after this, we'll get back to our MLB Hot Stove Live as well. But trade deadline season is here. We're going to be live for you guys every single day up until and through the trade deadline, which is on the 8th. So make sure you join us and keep up to date with all the latest rumors. We did actually get a trade yesterday. We talked about that a little bit. Steven Adams is going to be out for the year, of course. He'll be back next year and be a good backup center, if you will, for the Houston Rockets for the cost of 3 second-round picks. Now, there's a bunch of rumors out there as far as who's available, who's not available. So let's get the thing started off right and just start with what names are actually on the board. We'll start with the LA Lakers. There's some hesitation around the market right now as to whether or not a guy like LeBron James could be someone who looks for a trade possibly. That's not happening. I didn't think it was going to happen. I think the only way there would have been is if he asked for one, and LeBron has never asked for a trade. I didn't think he was going to start now at the very end of his career. But there were those of you out there who thought LeBron wanted out of LA. It's not happening. Now, who exactly is on the market? Well, any number of players like Kyle Kuzma of the Washington Wizards, DeJounte Murray of the Atlanta Hawks. Some mixed reports as to whether or not Jeremy Grant is actually on the market or not for the Portland Trail Blazers. Malcolm Brogdon from the same team as well. You look at the Philadelphia 76ers, one of the most active teams, at least what we expected to be one of the most active teams here at the deadline. Looks like Joel Embiid is going to miss significant time due to the injury that he suffered. There's still, unconfirmed reports that it's a torn meniscus or a partially torn meniscus, or that it might be even more severe than just a meniscus. But for the Philadelphia 76ers, this is the death knell to their season. I know Tyrese Maxey had a great game right after he went out, but we're talking about the heartbeat of that team. That team is only going to go as far as Joel Embiid is able to take them. And sure, they might be able to trade water, but if they do, they're still probably going to be looking at 6, 7, 8 seed anyway when they get to the postseason. And there's no guarantee they win a postseason round, especially if Embiid's not back. If he is back, is he back to being 100%? Or are they risking further injury by bringing him back too early? Embiid really kind of showed something to me this year. It showed me that he was making a more concerted effort to be available when it comes to the postseason. We saw him kind of, when he wasn't feeling 100%, he would take a game off, that kind of thing. And I think Embiid started to hear some of that noise around him. He started to hear, those whispers that, hey, he's ducking guys like Giannis and he's ducking guys like Jokic. Well, he wasn't 100%. When we just saw what happened in that game where he wasn't feeling 100%, he had heard all those whispers and said, nah, I'll give it a go, I can go. And all the reporters who were there at the game watching him go through shoot-around said, hey, he doesn't look right. And in the game, that's when he suffered the injury, and now we're looking at Embiid not only missing the remainder of the season possibly, but possibly into the postseason, maybe not even returning at all. There's still a mixed bag as far as where he's actually at as far as his health, but you can't expect him to come back anytime in the next month, you'd have to say, at the bare minimum. And I think that's the death knell, I believe, to the 76ers season. Now, what does it mean for the trade deadline? Why are you talking about an injured guy? Well, Joel Embiid may not be traded, but they still have a number of expiring deals, and they could obviously go into the market this offseason and try to lure away a star player, try to do a trade possibly. There's any number of things they could do this offseason. However, you look at this team, Tyrese Maxey is going to be deserving of a max contract, especially with how much they're going to rely on him with Embiid out. He is going to get a max contract from them. So you're going to have two big-time salaries already on your books, in Embiid and Maxey. That leaves one more big-time player that you could possibly bring in on this roster, maybe a sign-and trade with Tobias Harris going the other way. What star player is going to look at that team and say, hey, I want to play there with that team? Embiid's a great player, don't get me wrong. If I'm an NBA player, I would love to play with both of those guys. But are you saying there's not any number of other better destinations at this point, especially when you consider the health of Embiid? You look at the youth on that team and what else is really there. When I say youth, I'm really referring to Tyrese Maxey. He is still very young, but they don't really have too much else behind them. This roster is basically going to be gutted after the season because of all the expiring contracts, which is good because I suppose they could kind of build up from there. But I like the pieces they have. Of course, they could bring some of them back, but I just don't see a path forward with the way they currently have constructed their roster. So, as far as the trade deadline, what does this mean for them? I believe they could trade off some of these guys, take on multi-year contracts if for a player that they really like, maybe get some more draft capital back and get some more ammunition to trade for whoever they want. But I think the bigger issue after the season, once Embiid is healthy and they once again lose early in the postseason, does Embiid start to harbor ill will towards the franchise and just say, I just can't win here? I think Embiid really does want to win. That's why he made such a concerted effort to be available for the postseason. Tough luck, unfortunately, even doing everything right, he kind of violated his own rule by playing when he wasn't 100%, got injured, and now it's going to cost them another run at an NBA final. So we'll see what happens in Philadelphia, but keep your eyes peeled on what they do here at the trade deadline, what they do to try to bring in another star to surround Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. And if they don't get that done, how much longer does Embiid say, hey, I still want to be here, rather than somewhere else? So that's kind of the big domino right now. There's not really too many marquee, star-level players right now in the NBA that are going to be available via trade at any point in the near future. I suppose some people would argue that Zion Williamson at one point or another could be the next guy that's traded at this point. DeJounte Murray isn't necessarily a star, but he's still a very high-quality player. I think he's kind of the third banana on a really good team, but maybe, just maybe, Joel Embiid at some point could be the next big-time star that gets moved. Tough for Philadelphia fans, but it's just the way things go when you're not winning an NBA Finals and you got a star that wants to win. I know a lot of people want to look towards Dallas, but Dallas right now, they're going to have the ability and the picks available to trade for a star like Joel Embiid. And if Embiid asks out, he would be the perfect fit in Dallas. The New York Knicks may have the more assets to trade at that point. Maybe the Oklahoma City Thunder get in there. Any one of these other, a number of other teams that could get in there for Joel Embiid. But a lot of those teams that have picks to trade already have solutions at the center spot. And Derek Lively, as good as he's been with Dallas, would be another great young piece that not many other teams could trade, along with the first-round picks the Mavericks are going to have available to them after the season to get a deal like this done. We'll be curious to see if Dallas decides to hold on to their ammunition in the hopes of a Joel Embiid type of trade, or if they decide to go ahead and trade one of those picks now, get a guy like Kyle Kuzma, maybe some other pieces to kind of make another run at it this year. You can't really waste any year of your star player's prime, and Dallas is learning the hard way of missing out on bringing back a guy like Jalen Brunson, having to take a dip down and then sell out to get another star player in Kyrie Irving to kind of get back to where you were just a year before. Not really any better than, but just at the level you were a year ago. And Dallas can't afford to take a step back. Any one of these other teams that's looking to compete for an NBA Finals can't take a step back at this point with their young stars that they have on their roster. So keep your eyes peeled at the deadline for what happens in Philadelphia, what happens in Dallas, what they decide to do with that first-round pick that they have available to trade in 2027, if they decide to move that, or if they decide to just move the couple of second-round picks that they got in that pick swap from the San Antonio Spurs that brought them Grant Williams. So make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. As far as who else could be available, hearing a lot of smoke around the Charlotte Hornets right now as to who they might be willing to move off of. Sounds like the Phoenix Suns are very much interested in bringing in Miles Bridges. The Dallas Mavericks are another team that's been consistently been talked about among league sources for the past 3 or 4 weeks now around Miles Bridges. Remember, he has some off-the-court issues. Whatever your thoughts are on him as far as a human being, those kinds of things, we'll reserve judgment for now as to, if you guys want to look into what he's done off the court. But as far as on the court, it's hard to argue with the talent. He's phenomenal on the offensive end of the floor, brings some size, some physicality to a lineup. And a lot of these teams that need wing help, i.e. Dallas, he'd be a great fit from a basketball perspective on the court. But does Dallas really want to do that? Phoenix seems to be willing to go all out to be able to bring him in, but they don't have any first-round picks to trade here at the deadline. They only have some second-round picks that they could move, and that's it. So we'll see what happens with the Charlotte Hornets as far as Miles Bridges. What else do they have to trade? Well, they just acquired Kyle Lowry in that deal for Terry Rozier and a first-round pick. As far as Kyle Lowry, if he doesn't get moved, I'd expect him to be bought out. And there's not too many teams he could go to in the buyout market. So if a team is looking to get off some salary, some long-term commitments, if they're willing to attach a pick to that salary and give Kyle Lowry to the other team, that could be a trade I see happening here at the deadline. Who else do they have? They have Gordon Hayward, another expiring deal, big-time salary that could go out, possibly take on some salary. Sounds like Charlotte, which is under new ownership, is looking to clear the decks there. So I'm not sure how much they have an appetite for taking on long-term salary, or if they just want to clear the decks, see where they're at, and move forward from there. So we'll see what strategy they decide to employ here at the deadline. Charlotte isn't exactly a free agent haven, if you will. They're going to have to overpay for every single free agent they want to bring in, and so I'm not sure, clearing salary is the best way to go. But if you're a new owner, you want to cut costs, I suppose, in the beginning after you just spent so much money to acquire the team. Maybe that's just the way, just the facts of life at that point. So we'll see which direction they would go. LaMelo Ball really is the only positive thing they have going on that roster right now. They're going to give a lot of minutes here to Miller and let him kind of run the team for a little bit. He's going to get a lot of minutes there at the 3-4 spot and get a lot of ball handling time as well. We'll see if he develops as the year goes along. Think of him as far as his development this year is what they're hoping for is like a Scotty Barnes type of player. Somebody who can shoot, play some D, maybe some OG Anunoby, whoever, some type of combination of those two. If they can get that level of progression out of him in his rookie year, Charlotte would absolutely love that. I don't see that really happening, but that's the best case scenario that they have to hope for. As far as the trade deadline, they also have guys like P.J. Washington, who signed to a 3-year deal. If they're willing, or if they're looking to offload some salary, there is no shortage of teams that would be willing to take on a P.J. Washington who is struggling, at least based on his career averages this season. The numbers have dipped for him a little bit. Kind of hard to blame him, though, when LaMelo Ball hasn't been around a whole lot. Terry Rozier is more of a shoot-first type of a point guard when he's been asked to be the ball handler there. So maybe going to a team that has a primary ball handler that can get him into more advantageous situations would be good for him. Look for teams that have some stability at the guard spot that are looking for some more size at that wing position. I know the Lakers have been one of the teams that have reached out about P.J. Washington's availability, the Dallas Mavericks as well. The Milwaukee Bucks, I believe, are another team that's checked in on his availability. Before the trade for Pascal Siakam, the Pacers were another team. But they have a number of pieces that they could move out there in Charlotte. We've touched on the Jeremy Grant stuff earlier in the video yesterday as well. If you guys want to check that one out, we've touched a little bit on Washington, talked a little bit about the Charlotte Hornets. One other player on that Washington Wizards team that sounds like is commanding a hefty price right now is Tyus Jones. Sounds like the Wizards have a first-round pick grade on him right now as far as what they're looking for in trade value. He is an expiring deal. Maybe you can offload some salary going back to Washington. Maybe then it's worth it to give up a first-round pick. But for an expiring deal, as good of a distributor as Jones is, I just don't see it being worth a first-round pick unless he's that one piece that pushes you over the top. And I'm not sure he's that piece for any team out there. So maybe they have to end up settling, for 3 second-round picks, 4 second-round picks for an expiring deal in Jones. So that's one of the other point guards that we've seen mentioned quite a few times. The Utah Jazz are another team that's right on the bubble of the postseason. Are they going to be a team that competes for one of those top 6 spots, or are they going to be in the play-in tournament, or are they just going to try to tank it at the end of the season to get a higher pick? Remains to be seen which strategy they will go. Keontae George has been a revelation for them. Kessler's been moved to the bench anyway, with John Collins manning that 5 spot, and he's really blossomed in that role since they moved him there. There was some thoughts earlier this season that he might be the odd man out of that rotation. Ultimately, the coaching staff was able to find him a situation that worked for him, and Lauri Markkanen really has elevated his game since going to Utah. There's no way they're moving Markkanen. There's no way they're moving George. And right now, with the salary of Collins and the growth that they're seeing out of him, they're not going to move him either. Walker Kessler, I would say, is pretty much untouchable as well. Outside of that, you can call the Jazz about guys like Kelly Olynyk. I would expect him to be moved here at the deadline. Jordan Clarkson would be another guy I'd keep my eyes on, as well as Colin Sexton. The Los Angeles Lakers are one of the teams that's checked in on Sexton if they're unable to get a deal done for DeJounte Murray. That would be a good fit there, I believe. However, maybe they want to go with a guy like Tyus Jones, more of a pass-first point guard as opposed to a shoot-first type of point guard. So let us know in the comment section what you guys see happening here at the deadline. Listening to a bunch of different podcasts over the last 24 hours around the NBA, with the Woj Pod, with the Low Post, with the This League Uncut with Mark Stein. Watched or listened to some of the Brian Windhorst pod as well, the Hoops Collective podcast, if you will. They have a lot of great different sources on there that are telling them there's a lot of movement right now on the backup center market. So guys like Daniel Gafford, Nick Richards, that type of player, those guys are being talked about with a number of different teams, and those guys are going to fly off the shelves on deadline day. But they're not hearing too many big name type of guys that are going to go before the deadline either. The biggest names we're talking about right now are going to be DeJounte Murray and Kyle Kuzma being probably the best 2 options left. We did most of our trading already this year with Damian Lillard going to Milwaukee. Drew Holiday was traded as well. Kristaps Porzingis in the offseason. A lot of teams did their shopping early this year. So Pascal Siakam has already been moved now. OG Anunoby's already been moved. Terry Rozier got moved for a first-round pick. All of those guys have already moved on to their next situation, and we'll see what options are left out there. One of the teams out there, like the Minnesota Timberwolves, they really need to improve their point guard spot, that backup point guard, somebody who's able to distribute a little bit better. They're a great defensive team, but they need to get a point guard in there. The New York Knicks are another team that is looking for a backup point guard after IQ left in that trade for OG Anunoby. They need to get somebody who's kind of a little bit better ball handler than Deuce McBride anyway. So we'll see if they decide to go the proven veteran route with Malcolm Brogdon in Portland, or if they go with a young guy approach in Jaden Hardy from Dallas. Be an interesting trade deadline for the New York Knicks, who are going to have quite the package at the deadline and in the offseason for whoever they decide to add to this team. That is going to be the team to go to for another star type of player. Now, Evan Fournier is the only contract on there right now. Is the reason why he's on there is for his contract, because he'd be a great asset in a trade. It's not going to cost them guys that they already built up on their guard rotation, like a DiVincenzo or a Josh Hart. They have Fournier's contract. They can make things work around that and not give up the bulk of their team, what's made them so successful. The Knicks really have played really great lunch pail type of defense, if you will. They struggle shooting from time to time, but that defense will travel. In games where they just do not have a shot, can't buy a bucket, They're always in it at the very end, and Jalen Brunson somehow finds a way to bail them out. We saw that in Indiana the other night, and look for them to add to that point guard mix a little bit to at least give Brunson a little bit of a breather from time to time as far as being able to initiate and create that offense for the Knicks. But we'll see what happens here at the deadline. Let's check in on the standings right now. Let me flip over my screen for you. As things stand right now in the East, Boston is still number one. You know what's kind of interesting, though, about that? With the NBA All-Star game coming up soon, Boston's coach cannot be the head coach because it'd be back-to-back years now for him to be the head coach in the All-Star game. So the next coach, as currently constructed, would be the Milwaukee Bucks. Who's their coach? Oh, it's Doc Rivers. Have they won a game with him yet as their head coach? No. So a coach who hasn't won a game all season could be the head coach of the Eastern Conference in the NBA All-Star game. That'd be very fascinating. Maybe he's able to pass on it and pass it down to Tibbs. We'll see. But that'd be a fascinating storyline going into the All-Star game. But you look at the Eastern Conference, what could we see here at the trade deadline? What teams need to make a move? Well, the Knicks currently sit in the 3 spot. We're already seeing the 76ers. They're in the 5th spot right now. They're going to tumble a little bit. I think the Pacers are going to leapfrog them. The Heat have really struggled over the past, 10 to 14 games or so. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near that level of play the rest of the way, though. I think they're going to be one of the top 6 teams when it's all said and done. That means Philadelphia, at best, probably is in the play-in. At that point, is Embiid going to be back and healthy and be able to lead them from there? Very well could be. But they're a team that I would keep my eyes peeled for as, maybe trading off some of those wings, getting other assets, taking on contracts that fit for their long-term situation. Guys like Nick Batum, guys like Smart could all be on the way out here at the trade deadline. Tobias Harris would be another guy I'd keep my eyes peeled for being moved out of Philadelphia. You look at the Pacers, they already made their move with Pascal Siakam. Really like their depth that they were able to keep by only moving on from Bruce Brown, who I thought was a really ill-fitting player for this team, if you will, for the Indiana Pacers. He just didn't really fit what they needed. They needed somebody with size, somebody who could play the 3-4, somebody who could play the small ball 5, and Siakam is exactly that type of a player. Somebody who can play both ends of the court is exactly what head coach Rick Carlisle is looking for, and I would not be surprised when that deal gets done, or when they do finally get him signed to that max extension. Do not be surprised for that one. Orlando's had a pretty good year. They got off to a great start. They're kind of hitting that wall, though, a little bit right now. They're 4-6 in their last 10, but they've really struggled pretty much since the calendar turned to December. I would like to see them add a point guard. Not necessarily a veteran like a Malcolm Brogdon, but somebody this team can really grow with. They tried drafting it a couple of different times. They still have Markelle Fultz. They brought in Anthony Black. But somebody who can come in there like a DeJounte Murray, I think would work wonders for this team. They need some three-point shooting as well. Not saying Murray is a great three-point shooter by any means, but I am saying he's far better than anything they currently have on that roster as far as a three-point shooter at that position. So we'll see what they do here at the deadline, but I think they're solidly in the play-in and could look to add a point guard. The Chicago Bulls, sounds like from what everybody's hearing right now is that everybody else wants other pieces on the Chicago Bulls roster, like an Alex Caruso, like a guy like Andre Drummond, but the only thing the Chicago Bulls are willing to talk about with other teams is Zach LaVine. That's a guy who's making $40 million for the next 4 years, and that contract looks absolutely hideous. He's an offense first player, can play a little bit of defense, being generous on that one, but there's a lot of conversation about whether or not he's a winning type basketball player. You look at a guy like Christian Wood, who was thought of as a great offensive piece and every now and again could block a few shots, and when he tried for a possession or two, could play solid defense. Unfortunately, he chooses not to commit himself to that end of the floor, and he gets buried on the back end of the bench on multiple teams, and ultimately was run out of town from Dallas anyway. They couldn't trade him for a bag of balls at the end of last season, and ultimately goes to the LA Lakers and is on the end of their bench in a game where AD doesn't even start. You'd think Christian would be a great fit. No, they go with Jackson Hayes against the Boston Celtics. That tells you the type of player Christian Wood is. That's exactly who Zach LaVine is at the guard spot. Offense first, and maybe, just maybe, he doesn't necessarily play basketball in a way that's conducive to winning games. So what could he do? He could absolutely light up the score sheet. He could bring you some athleticism at the guard spot if you're missing that. But outside of that, are you really willing to sacrifice that much salary or that much of your cap space, that much of financial wherewithal, that much salary that you're going to have to send out the door, that much draft capital that you're going to have to give to Chicago to get this deal done? Is it worth any of that to be able to bring him in? And I don't see a situation in the NBA right now that's good for Zach LaVine. I think before the trade for Kyrie Irving for Dallas, that would have been a good fit for him. Not saying it would have been great as far as defense, but I'm saying he would at least given them another proven scorer on that roster. They since have gotten Kyrie Irving. There's no way they're bringing in Zach LaVine. You look at the LA Lakers, there are some whispers about him going there. They have D'Angelo Russell, who's kind of a similar type of player, offense type of player for them, but he's at a much lower salary. And if they're able to trade him in exchange for DeJounte Murray, that might be one way they could improve their roster here at the deadline. I would rather do that than a Zach LaVine type trade. Maybe you don't even have to get rid of D'Lo and you end up bringing in Tyus Jones or Colin Sexton rather than going after a guy like Zach LaVine who's going to cost you multiple high-end salaries, and I'm not sure he's going to help you more than hurt you. So I don't see that happening. And like I said, I just don't see anywhere else Zach LaVine is going to go. Now, the interesting one as far as a seller here is going to be the Atlanta Hawks. What could they do here at the deadline? I would love to see them kind of trade a bunch of their pieces. Guys like Clint Capella, who's on the downside of his career, eating $20 million this year and next year on the books. They need to get off of that salary before it gets even worse for them next year when they can't offload that salary. He'll be an expiring at that point, and that's really the only value he would have for them at that point. For the Hawks, DeJounte Murray would bring them the biggest return. They have some good pieces on the back end of that bench that they could move as well. We'll see what they decide to do. Guys like A.J. Griffin are drawing some attention from teams like the Dallas Mavericks. Somebody that they could kind of develop in Dallas if they're able to get their hands on him. Next is the Brooklyn Nets. They're a team that's kind of done a little bit of buying and selling over the past couple of years. Right now at the deadline, they just turned down an offer from the Houston Rockets of 3 first-round picks and Green in exchange for Mikal Bridges. Not surprised they turned that one down. I wouldn't want Green back as part of that package, and there's no confirmation as to the value of those first-round picks. Are they heavily protected? Were they completely unprotected? Are they any good picks from, the trade that they got from Brooklyn anyway? We'll see what happens there, but I just don't see that trade being being a great fit anyway for Brooklyn. Now, another trade that Brooklyn supposedly has turned down is 2 first-round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith. Now, one thing I would like to remind everybody is that 33% of the teams hold 75% of the tradable first-round picks right now. Not a whole lot of contenders right now have picks that they can trade. The only one that really does is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They have a bevy of second-round picks as well. They ain't going to be able to use all of them. I think they have like 20 second-round picks at least accumulated right now. They're getting close to that number anyway. And they need to trade for somebody who can rebound on that roster. If they can do that, I think that'd be a great deadline for them. I wouldn't trade any one of those first-round picks right now and just see where you're at after the season. They have a very strong roster, really like where they're at. But they're one team that would be willing to trade the first-round picks. If a star player like Joel Embiid came out, maybe that would be a good option for them. But again, he's injured now. You have no idea what you're going to get, and I don't think he's going to be available. There's nobody really here at the deadline that's going to move the needle, at least that's going to be worth multiple first-round picks to a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder or the New York Knicks right now. But they're going to have to wait until the offseason for those types of moves. But here at the deadline, you're looking at backup center market, veteran point guards coming in, maybe a three-point shooting specialist, maybe a defensive wing, somebody who can come in and play a little bit of defense for a second-round pick. Nothing really big is going to happen, at least here at the deadline. But as far as Dorian Finney-Smith, he probably, for the Brooklyn Nets, he would be one of the best defensive 3-and-D type wings that's out there that could be moved here at the deadline. So turning down 2 first-round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith, a little bit of a surprise. I told you guys a couple years ago, Dorian Finney-Smith was on such a great contract, was playing such great three-point shooting, and the defense was there for him. His numbers have kind of gone up and down the past year and a half since then. So to still have his value at 2 first-round picks is absolutely great for the Brooklyn Nets, but they turned it down. How much more are they wanting, and what's the value of those first-round picks? I know not a lot of teams value picks in 2024, so we'll see, what Brooklyn ultimately decides to do. Spencer Dinwiddie is basically being offered for a bag of balls at this point. Great, veteran type of voice at the point guard spot. Expiring deal, however, that salary of $20 million, little rich for a lot of teams out there. He may ultimately go into the buyout market. We'll see if Brooklyn decides to offload him before the deadline. Toronto Raptors, they still have Bruce Brown that they could deal here at the deadline. We'll see if they move him. Their ask is supposedly a first-round pick. We've talked a lot about the Hornets and Wizards already. Detroit have a couple of pieces they could move off of. They also have some expiring deals, but it sounds like they want to attack free agency this offseason. So maybe they're able to lure Pascal Siakam away, but it sounds like he had no interest in going there. They're 6-42 right now. I'll be surprised if they get above 15 wins. I think it'd be a challenge for them to get above 12 wins at this point. And that's kind of where things shape up in the Eastern Conference. On the Western Conference side, Minnesota Timberwolves, of course, your number one seed right now. They look really good defensively. They do need somebody to give them a little bit better of an offensive lift, if you will, a better distributor at the backup point guard spot. Maybe a three-point shooter would be good for them, but they have really good defensive numbers. Really like their team. Rudy Gobert is going to win the Defensive Player of the Year this year. Oklahoma City Thunder, only one game back, and boy, are they young, but man, are they fun to watch. In case you guys haven't been paying attention, Oklahoma has done a great job of developing some young, talented players. Chet Holmgren probably is your Rookie of the Year right now. We'll see who ultimately wins it between him and Wemby. The Clippers right now sit in that 3 spot, along with the Denver Nuggets in 4. That's probably going to be your 1 through 4 in the West this year. Then you get into 5 and 6, the Sacramento Kings and the Phoenix Suns, along with the New Orleans Pelicans, Dallas Mavericks, LA Lakers, Utah Jazz. That's kind of a big group right in there that's going to be vying for that 5 through 10 spot. I think Sacramento's pretty solidly going to get one of those 5 or 6 seeds, and then it's going to come down between those Phoenix, New Orleans, and Dallas, I believe, for that 6th spot. But if Dallas can add a guy like Kyle Kuzma, maybe they lock up that 6th spot. If Phoenix gets the deal done for Miles Bridges, maybe they lock up that number 6 spot. But Kevin Durant ain't getting any younger. Phoenix is going to have to do something here at the deadline, and I'll be curious to see what they ultimately decide to do. They don't have a lot of assets to move. As far as those top 4 teams, though, what could we look for them to possibly add? Clippers, I would look for them to actually offload the salary of a guy like P.J. Tucker to possibly bring in one more shooter, one more ball handler, somebody who can come in and distribute a little bit. But outside of that, they're going to pretty much hold pat. If you look at the Denver Nuggets, I think they would love to have another, 3-point shooter, somebody who could back up Jokic as well, but I don't think they're going to shell anything out. I think they're really happy with their roster as currently constructed, and they really did a nice job of getting some young guys on that roster, cost controlled, so that way they can develop and be there alongside a championship level roster right now. And I think Denver's set up quite well for the future as well. Sacramento, they're still looking for that wing type player. They're really in there for Pascal Siakam. Ultimately don't get the deal done. I would be surprised if they don't try to get something done with Kyle Kuzma. Supposedly Harrison Barnes is out there on the market as far as what they might be willing to offload into that type of a deal. Davion Mitchell is another name that's been bandied about as well. But they're looking for a number 3, 4 type player in their roster, and we'll see if they're able to get something like that done. We touched on the Phoenix Suns. They're looking for, one more piece to kind of keep them going, push them over the top a little bit. For the New Orleans Pelicans, there's been some rumors out there that maybe Herb Jones could be available. I would be surprised if they move him. He's on a good contract, 3-and-D wing, is starting to improve his offensive numbers a little bit as well. But the best part of him is his cost is absolutely controlled. You look at a guy like Trey Murphy, who's got a year and a half left on his deal right now. He's going to command significantly more than Herb Jones on the market. And so if I'm the New Orleans Pelicans, while he's not a huge salary, you package him with Jonas Valanciunas and you get the center that you want on that roster. Valanciunas is not going to be there next year. Sounds like he is on the way out. And so they need to bring in somebody. They have long held Jarrett Allen in Cleveland as their best case scenario for center. That's not happening, especially with the regression or at least plateauing of the skill set for Evan Mobley. I think Jarrett Allen is far too important right now for the Cleveland Cavaliers, so maybe a trade for Clint Capella could be in the offing there. I don't think Clint Capella necessarily is the same player he was, though, a year ago or even 2 years ago. I think he's on the backside of his career. Not sure if he fits them long-term there in New Orleans, but they need to add a center, so don't be surprised if they look towards the center market here at the trade deadline. That'd be the one spot I'd see them improve. Talked a lot about Dallas already. They're looking for a wing type player, a third banana, a third star, if you will. There's no third star out there right now in the trade market that they could bring in. But if they're able to add a Jeremy Grant, somebody who can give them some shooting, some size, some defense, able to take the pressure off of a guy like Grant Williams and move Grant Williams back to the bench, they just need somebody there to at least give some help to Luka Doncic. Luka right now is going to win the MVP as long as he meets that game played requirement. Most of the other contenders for the MVP are not going to meet that requirement, which might by default or by just default anyway give it to Luka, but he is playing at an absolute MVP level right now, carrying Dallas. They need to give that man some help. That roster is, I know they like to say, to reporters and so forth that they like their roster, and they should. They have some good pieces, but none of them are necessarily a third star. None of them are a solid enough supporting cast to really get the job done. Derek Lively was absolutely worth the tank last year, really salvaged them from the embarrassment that they suffered at the final 2 games of the season, and for the embarrassment that they suffered, the fine that they got. Derek Lively is everything they could have hoped for, and then some in his rookie season. I'm shocked they're playing him as much as they did. They were hoping to play guys like Maxi Kleber in front of him. Maybe Richaun Holmes would compete for him, minutes with him at the 5 spot. Richaun Holmes only gets in there when he's not available. That's it. Lively has been that good as a rookie. You look back at Jarrett Allen's rookie year with the Brooklyn Nets, it's a very similar type of player. And as long as he continues to develop and maybe even adds a 3-point shot, Derek Lively really could be the perfect center for Luka to play with. Luka absolutely raves about the guy and is really happy to play with him. But they need to get him a backup center to ease off of some of the minutes as he's playing so many minutes as a rookie. He's got a broken nose already this season. He suffered a twisted ankle. He's just getting beat up. They're having to use him so much. He's still so very thin because he's so young. They need to get some more weight on him, need to get him a little bit more time in the NBA, get used to the NBA schedule. But they're asking a lot out of that rookie center. They need to get somebody in there rather than the often injured Maxi Kleber or the ineffective Dwight Powell. Great human beings, love them, but they need to do a little bit better from a talent perspective behind Derek Lively, and especially at that wing. Jeremy Grant, Tobias Harris, Kyle Kuzma, all guys who could fit that 3-4 spot in that lineup, whether they add P.J. Washington or Miles Bridges. They're looking for some wings. We'll see which direction they go. Maybe they can get in there for a 3-team trade with D'Angelo Russell, maybe get a Hachimura out of the Lakers if they get DeJounte Murray. They just need some wing help there in Dallas. For the LA Lakers, they're looking for some point guard help. We mentioned a few times now, DeJounte Murray, Tyus Jones, Colin Sexton. Those guys that they've been connected to, they're now going to be without Jared Vanderbilt for what sounds like about 4 weeks. LeBron and AD are also out of the lineup right now. Nothing long-term for either of them. But they need to get somebody else in there to raise the talent level of this roster. And they only have 1 pick to trade as well, that 2029 pick. They could do some swaps, I suppose. I can't remember if they could do some swaps. They might have already given all of those away. But the only first rounder that they could trade is that 29 first. And Rob Pelinka is loath to trade that. LeBron is basically putting it all caps in the media right now. Add to this roster. And to heck with that 2029 first or those swaps in the years after, etc. He wants to get some additions to this roster right now. He's, 40 years old right now. Completely understand where LeBron's coming from. But from a future standpoint, from a roster construction standpoint, I get why Pelinka has not made the move. Utah, we talked a little bit about them as to pieces they could move. For Houston, they just made the trade for next season in Steven Adams. I still think they're a year away from being, the next Sacramento Kings type team. I don't think they'll be to that level of Oklahoma City where they're at this year in the development. Jalen Williams has really been a great player for Oklahoma City. Josh Giddey could be the odd man out there. Looked like he'd be a good fit there as far as a secondary creator for them, but sounds like he's might not be meshing with that team as well as originally constructed. Maybe there are some teams out there that want to take a risk or take a flyer on Giddey, I should say. For the Rockets, though, I think they're going to just try to tread water, get into the play-in, get their guys some experience, and go forward from there. Now the elephant in the room. What are the Golden State Warriors going to do here at the trade deadline? Are they going to hold on to Steph, Clay, Draymond, Wiggins, all those guys, Chris Paul? Or are they going to decide to offload some salary, save a little bit of money, attach a first-round pick, and just get their books right for future years? I posted a trade on Fanspo about a week ago anyway, and just the reaction from Warriors fans alone, I saved them $200 million in payroll and luxury tax commitments. And all they can do is say, I wouldn't attach anything to Wiggins. In fact, if I'm trading Wiggins, I want a first round pick back. What are you smoking and where can I get some? That's all I can say to those Warriors fans. Andrew Wiggins is a negative asset right now. Understandably, you might want to hold on to him and possibly he could recover his value, but the Warriors just have so much going on with their team. The assistant coach passing away, Draymond's antics on the court and off. He's just, one crazy incident away from another lengthy suspension, having to go to counseling, all those types of things. I don't even think it's out of the realm of possibility that this could be his final year if he has one more incident like he's had. I mean, one more kick to the groin, one more smack to somebody's face, one more, incident with a referee, one more punch to a teammate. Those are the types of things that, Draymond Green has become known for. And I understand he's got some issues in his personal life. We've seen that documented on TNT anyway, with the guys talking about what he might have going off the court that we might not know about, that he's got a lot going on. I get all of that. But at a certain point, this is a workplace. This is a team. They're trying to strive towards goals. And if you're not helping them get to those goals, you're detracting from the team and you just need to go away. Wish your situation gets better. We'll give you the tools that you need for you to help get that situation better. But until it's better, until you can help the team, why are you here? And so I could see that definitely happening with Draymond at some point. So for me, if I'm a team looking at Draymond Green and saying, hey, he could help our defense, sure, he absolutely could do that. But is he going to be an albatross on your roster from a salary perspective if he gets suspended again and just isn't available, eating up all of that room on your payroll? Is he going to retire at some point? Is he going to be forced away from the NBA? Is he going to still be effective as he was in Golden State system? All of those are big question marks. He's never really shot the ball really well, but he's been a great defender in the past. He's also been a really good facilitator. Are those abilities starting to wane as well? As for the Andrew Wiggins argument, he missed a lot of time due to injury last year. His numbers are down big time this year. He's had some injury issues as well. The assistant coach passing away. Could these things fix themselves in time? Absolutely. He could turn it around. Maybe he's just trying to get the rust off of him. All those types of things. Absolutely, you could make that argument. But if I'm a team looking to acquire that contract, I can't count on that production. I have to worry about the worst case scenario. I have to worry about the best case scenario. And I still have to come up with a deal that I can take to my owner and say, hey, you willing to pay $100 million over the next 4 years for a guy that's going to be on the end of the bench if things don't work out? If he's willing to do that, maybe you get something out of it. But ultimately, I don't think there's any owner in the league that looks at the Andrew Wiggins contract and said, yeah, come on down, we'll take the risk. I don't think there's anybody in their right mind that would do that. I know Golden State Warriors fans are telling me all the time, Andrew Wiggins was great in the playoffs just 2 years ago. We're talking about the Andrew Wiggins that's in front of us today. He's not the same player. His defense has started to back off. His ability on the court could be affected by injury, absolutely, and that could resolve itself. But for right now, it's not. His shooting hasn't been very good, and he's had some injury issues over the last year and a half that worry about his availability, let alone what his actual performance is on the court. And you're asking me to save you $100 million in salary plus the tax money that it would save you to offload his salary? I'm sorry, you're going to have to attach an asset in order for it to be worth it for me to take that risk and eat $100 million in payroll for him to sit on the end of my bench if it doesn't work out. There's got to be some type of compensation there for Warriors fans, and we'll see if they understand that as they get close to the deadline, if they decide to offload some salary. Chris Paul's the last one there. The fit hasn't been great. We didn't think it would be great at the beginning anyway. The reason why the trade was made is mainly get rid of the Jordan Poole contract and the controversy between him and, you guessed it, Draymond Green. And Chris Paul, what can you say? He's no longer the point guard. He's still pretty good. He still can shoot the three. But if you're asking him to play 35 minutes a night, I just don't think it's a good fit. So if you're asking him to come in and be your veteran leader on the second unit, I think he'd be absolutely fantastic in that role. Playing 20 to 25 minutes a game would be perfect for him. But he's making so much money, you're going to have to attach an asset to get that deal done. Now, the one positive asset I could see them moving is Kevon Looney. He was very close to the assistant coach that passed away. In fact, part of the reason why that coach was there was to help improve specifically Kevon Looney and his rebounding numbers. You saw the dominant performance he gave in the postseason a couple years ago against Boston, all those other teams, and since with that new ability to be able to rebound so much better after they hired that coach, he really did a number improving his skill. And I think he's probably one of the players affected most by that coach passing away. But he'd be the one positive asset on that roster they could move. I know there's some conversation around some media personalities that maybe a trade for Clay for, LeBron James was floated on Fox Sports. That's never going to happen. Clay ain't going to go anywhere. He doesn't have positive value, but he also doesn't have negative value. He means more to Golden State than any other team. He ain't going anywhere. Same for Steph Curry. So that's kind of where things are at for the Golden State Warriors. For the Memphis Grizzlies, they are basically just a team decimated by injury. Bane, Morant, Clark, Adams before he was traded. This team is just decimated. They have a ton of G League guys in their roster right now. They're actually starting Scottie Pippen Jr., and it's just looking bleak this year. Next year should be better. Sounds like they're going to hold on to Marcus Smart. That was one of the headlines that was out there today, that the Milwaukee Bucks, among others, the LA Lakers, were teams that were kicking the tires on Marcus Smart. Really good defensive player, former defensive player of the year, and a good three-point shooter as well, can handle the ball a little bit. But it sounds like they're going to hold on to him. He's a good contract on that roster and a really good fit with that type of team. Remember, the Tony Allen, he kind of is a souped-up version of Tony Allen for that Grizzlies team. We talked a lot about the Blazers already the last couple of days anyway, about Jeremy Grant possibly being available. But it sounds like they want to rehab his value a little bit and possibly get more than just a couple of second-round picks for him at this point. Sounds like the ask originally was 2 first-round picks. They got laughed at by pretty much every team. The ask dropped to 1 first-round pick, and they ain't going to get anywhere near a valuable first-rounder for Jeremy Grant at this point. I'd be shocked if he moved for anything, more than a few second-round picks. For the San Antonio Spurs, this is just about getting Wemby better pieces around him and getting some more talent around the periphery, adding some draft picks, etc. There was some rumors out there that maybe a return of DeJounte Murray would be a good fit there. I do think it'd be a great fit. He's on a very good contract as well. Does have the biggest trade kicker in NBA history, but that would be paid by the Atlanta Hawks, not the San Antonio Spurs. So maybe that could be a fit as far as a buy type of a move. But I do think they're going to try to offload the contract of Doug McDermott, maybe a couple other veterans as well off of that roster. But that's kind of where things stand right now in the NBA. Where do you guys think teams are going to try to add around the deadline here? Backup center market, as I mentioned, is hot right now. We saw one that was already injured and out for the year, already moved for 3 second-round picks. Wings, backup point guard, pretty much where it's going to be at for the NBA trade deadline. But make sure you join us again tomorrow night as we break down all the latest news, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow night. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe on the video. Appreciate those of you who joined us and watched some of our videos that we posted earlier about the Super Bowl coming up as well. We're going to have our MLB Hot Stove Live here in just a few moments, so make sure you tune into that one shortly. Appreciate y'all, and y'all have a good one.